Because we know that the fate of Europe will never be irrelevant to our own. National security, which this conference is largely about, is not merely a series of technical questions. How much we spend on defense or where, how we deploy it, these are important questions. They are. But they are not the fundamental one. The fundamental question we must answer at the outset is, what exactly are we defending?
Everybody, thanks for choosing to hang out with your host, the Conservative Bird, and me, Double G, and you're on the Brick Road Podcast.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We really appreciate you guys stopping by and hanging out with us. Before we get into everything, please make sure to hit the like, hit the share, hit the subscribe, and smash the notification. It is the quick, easy, and free way to help this channel grow as big as possible.
Absolutely, Bird. And today we're going to be talking about Marco Rubio. By the way, he was over in Munich, and I'm basically going to say he just went there and he was a boss.
Yeah.
He told Europe how it's going to be, and he took control of the situation, took control of the moment, and even got a standing ovation.
Yeah, from what I haven't heard the speech yet. I haven't had a chance to check it out, but from what I've heard from other conservative influencers is this was like him putting his foot in the door for a presidential bid in 2028, possibly. That's how great that they're saying that this speech was.
Like I said, Bert, I've seen the highlights of it, and what I've seen so far, the man is definitely ready to be president of the United States one day.
Okay, so some of this, me and you are seeing for the first time, so let's get into it.
Because we know that the fate of Europe will never be irrelevant to our own. National security, which this conference is largely about, is not merely a series of technical questions. How much we spend on defense or where, how we deploy it, these are important questions. They are. But they are not the fundamental one. The fundamental question we must answer at the outset is, what exactly are we defending? Because armies do not fight for abstractions. Armies fight for a people. Armies fight for a nation. Armies fight for a way of life. And that is what we are defending. A great civilization that has every reason to be proud of its history, confident of its future, and aims to always be the master of its own economic and political destiny. It was here, in Europe, where the ideas that planted the seeds of liberty that changed the world were born. It was here in Europe which gave the world the rule of law, the universities, and the scientific revolution. It was this continent that produced the genius of Mozart and Beethoven, of Dante and Shakespeare, of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And
I want to say that one thing he is saying is absolutely true. Our troops fight for our freedoms. That is what they're there for. They're there to fight for the American people, for us everyday people, and for them.
Yeah, and definitely for American interests. And I
Yes.
think Marco Rubio's making that. And I think what he's pointing out right here is these are the same continent that we are descendants from, at least most of us. And they were at the center of the civilization, and now they're abandoning it.
Crazy.
this is the place where the vaulted ceilings of the Sistine Chapel and the towering spires of the great cathedral in Cologne, they testify not just to the greatness of our past or to a faith in God that inspired these marvels. They foreshadow the wonders that await us in our future. But only if we are unapologetic in our heritage and proud of this common inheritance can we together begin the work of envisioning and shaping our economic and our political future. Deindustrialization was not inevitable. It was a conscious policy choice, a decades-long economic undertaking that stripped our nations of their wealth, of their productive capacity, and of their independence. And the loss of our supply chain sovereignty was not a function of a prosperous and healthy system of global trade. It was foolish. It was a foolish but voluntary transformation of our economy that left us dependent on others for our needs and dangerously vulnerable to crisis.
And that's true. And I think that that's what Donald Trump is trying to right a lot of the wrongs that have been going on. And he's trying to bring back all the work here so we don't have to depend on these other nations. We are the powerhouse, and we're not being treated as such. And that's the problem.
And I also think it's also not fair on the matchup. We're the ones who are covering, the big brother job here. We're the ones that are looking out for them militarily and looking out for them economically also.
Right.
And our value system has changed greatly.
Exactly.
It has changed greatly.
Mass migration isn't some fringe concern of little consequence. It was and continues to be a crisis which is transforming and destabilizing societies all across the West. Together, we can reindustrialize our economies and rebuild our capacity to defend our people. But the work of this new alliance should not be focused just on military cooperation and reclaiming the industries of the past. It should also be focused on together advancing our mutual interests in new frontiers, unshackling our ingenuity, our creativity, and the dynamic spirit to build a new Western century. Commercial space travel and cutting-edge artificial intelligence, industrial automation and flex manufacturing, creating a Western supply chain for critical minerals not vulnerable to extortion from other powers, and a unified effort to compete for market share in the economies of the global South. Together, we can not only take back control of our own industries and supply chains, we can prosper in the areas that will define the 21st century. But we must also gain control of our national borders. Controlling who and how many people enter our countries, this is not an expression of xenophobia. It is not hate. It is a fundamental act of national sovereignty. And the failure to do so is not just an abdication of one of our most basic duties owed to our people. It is an urgent threat to the fabric of our societies and the survival of our civilization itself. And finally, we can no longer place the so-called global order above the vital interests of our people and our nations. We do not need to abandon the system of international cooperation we authored. And we don't need to dismantle the global institutions of the old order that together we built. But these must be reformed. These must be rebuilt. For example, the United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world. But we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers and has played virtually no role. It could not solve the war in Gaza. Instead, it was American leadership that freed captives from barbarians and brought about a fragile truce. It has not solved the war in Ukraine. It took American leadership in partnership with many of the countries here today just to bring the two sides to the table in search of a still elusive peace. It was powerless to constrain the nuclear program of radical Shia clerics in Tehran. That required 14 bombs dropped with precision from American B-2 bombers. And it was unable to address the threat to our security from a narco-terrorist dictator in Venezuela. Instead, it took American special forces to bring this fugitive to justice.
Man, I don't even want to pause it just because I'm just so interested in the speech and what he's saying. But he's just speaking so much truth. It's it's all about bringing back the power, the safety, and everything back to America and making America the powerhouse that it's supposed to be. That's what this speech is all about, and making America safe again.
And forcing Europe to do the same.
Right.
Forcing Europe to become a safe country again for its citizens. Forcing Europe back into their democratic values that they claim that they have.
Right.
Because right now, dude, they've got laws in Europe that you and I, our show, we get thrown in jail for.
Crazy,
you know
right?
What I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's nothing. I mean, dude, they have turned their back on liberty, and he's calling them out on that, and I love it. Dude, I think this might be one of the greatest speeches of this century.
In a perfect world, all of these problems and more would be solved by diplomats and strongly worded resolutions. But we do not live in a perfect world.
No,
And
we
we
don't.
cannot continue to allow those who blatantly and openly threaten our citizens and endanger our global stability to shield themselves behind abstractions of international law which they themselves routinely violate.
That's right.
This is the path that President Trump and the United States has embarked upon. It is the path we ask you here in Europe to join us on. It is a path we have walked together before and hope to walk together again. For 5 centuries, before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions and by anti-colonial uprisings that would transform the
waiting
world
for him to call him out,
and drape the red hammer in.
Yeah. And this is it. This is where he's going to let him know, like, hey, it's time to get your shit together. You know, you're making us look bad. You know, you're making it show us why we seceded from you. You know what I mean? Like, you're making yourselves look bad.
We left the United Nations. We're not part of the UN anymore.
I'm just saying I'm saying since we left the UK for America and back in that 1776, since we became America, this is why we left the UK. And if they don't get their shit together, it's not good. Not a good look.
Sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Against that backdrop, then as now, many came to believe that the West's age of dominance had come to an end, and that our future was destined to be a faint and feeble echo of our past. But together, our predecessors recognized that decline was a choice, and it was a choice they refused to make. This is what we did together once before, and this is what President Trump and the United States want to do again now, together with you. And this is why we do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it.
Now, I agree with him to a certain extent on that, okay? Because we do want our allies to be just as strong, or similar in strength as we are. But they also have to want that themselves,
Oh, I think he wants them to want that.
Right, and that's what, so I agree with them on that, but they have to want that. Like, if they don't want that, we can't, then that's on them. Maybe we need to redecide who our allies are.
If you lead a horse to water and it chooses not to drink, there's really not much you can do about that.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio is trying to lead this horse called Europe to the water. And honestly, Bird, you might be onto something. I'm afraid you just might be 50% probably right, man. I mean, it could go either way. I mean, honestly, they just might cowardice out, dude, and sell themselves out. It wouldn't be the first time that, Europe has sold itself out in different places.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
And this is why we do not...
Probably won't be the last time.
I want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance is the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future. And the only fear we have is the fear of the shame of not leaving our nations prouder, stronger, and wealthier for our children. An alliance ready to defend our people, to safeguard our interests, and to preserve the freedom of action that allows us to shape our own destiny. Not one that exists to operate a global welfare state and atone for the purported sins of past generations. An alliance that does not allow its power to be outsourced, constrained, or subordinated to systems beyond its control. One that does not depend on others for the critical necessities of its national life. And one that does not maintain the polite pretense.
Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Did you catch what he just said there, Bird? He does. Rewind that real quick. Rewind that one little spot right there, real quick. This is very
control.
Yeah.
One that does not depend on others for the critical necessities of its national life. And
Okay,
one that does not maintain the polite
He wants
pretense.
our allies to be as strong as us so that they don't have to depend on us.
Right.
They can do it themselves if they had to.
And that makes sense. That makes sense.
I agree with that.
That our way of life
I agree
is
too.
just one among many, and that asks for permission before it acts. And above all, an alliance based on the recognition that we, the West, have inherited together. What we have inherited together is something that is unique and distinctive and irreplaceable. Because this, after all, is the very foundation of the transatlantic bond. Acting together in this way, we will not just help recover a sane foreign policy, it will restore to us a clear sense of ourselves. It will restore a place in the world. And in so doing, it will rebuke and deter the forces of civilizational erasure that today menace both America and Europe alike. So in a time of headlines heralding the end of the transatlantic era, let it be known and clear to all that this is neither our goal nor our wish. Because for us Americans, our home may be in the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe.
I love it. I love it. Very good speech. I will say this. I feel like we need to say that to a lot of our allies, to be honest. You know?
I think he is saying it to all of our allies.
Yeah.
I mean, over here in the Western Hemisphere, I think Canada and Mexico and South America kind of got the idea where we stand now.
Yeah.
I think they get it.
I agree.
But yeah, I do wait till they show this. This part I saw.
Our story began with an Italian explorer whose adventure into the great unknown to discover a new world brought Christianity to the Americas and became the legend that defined the imagination of our pioneer nation. Our first colonies were built by English settlers, to whom we owe not just the language we speak, but the whole of our political and legal system. Our frontiers were shaped by Scots-Irish, that proud, hardy clan from the hills of Ulster that gave us Davy Crockett and Mark Twain and Teddy Roosevelt and Neil Armstrong. Our great Midwestern heartland was built by German farmers and craftsmen who transformed empty plains into a global agricultural powerhouse. And by the way, dramatically upgraded the quality of American beer. Our expansion into the interior followed the footsteps of French fur traders and explorers whose names, by the way, still adorn the street signs and town names all across the Mississippi Valley. Our horses, our ranches, our rodeos, the entire romance of the cowboy archetype that became synonymous with the American West. These were born in Spain. And our largest and most iconic city was named New Amsterdam before it was named New York. And you know that in the year that my country was founded, Lorenzo and Catalina Giraldi lived in Casal Monferrato in the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. and Jose and Manuela Reina lived in Sevilla, Spain. I don't know what, if anything, they knew about the 13 colonies which had gained their independence from the British Empire. But here's what I'm certain of. They could have never imagined that 250 years later, one of their direct descendants would be back here today on this continent as the chief diplomat of that infant nation.
That's
And yet
awesome.
here I am, reminded by my own story that both our histories and our fates will always be linked. Together, we rebuilt a shattered continent in the wake of 2 devastating world wars. When we found ourselves divided once again by the Iron Curtain, the Free West linked arms with the courageous dissidents struggling against tyranny in the East to defeat Soviet communism. We have fought against each other, then reconciled, then fought, then reconciled again. And we have bled and died side by side on battlefields from Kapyong to Kandahar. And I'm here today to leave it clear that America is charting the path for a new century of prosperity, and that once again, we want to do it together with you, our cherished allies and our oldest friends.
He's killing it right now, giving a great speech.
Dude, well, I'm telling you, dude, this is going to go down as one of the greatest international speeches in world history. Mark my words. Mark my words. In this country.
Okay.
We want to do it together with you, with a Europe that is proud of its heritage and of its history, with a Europe that has the spirit of creation and liberty that sent ships out into uncharted seas and birthed our civilization, with a Europe that has the means to defend itself and the will to survive. We should be proud of what we achieved together in the last century, but now we must confront and embrace the opportunities of a new one. Because yesterday is over. The future is inevitable. And our destiny together awaits. Thank you.
I love it. Great speech. He let them know that they are on notice, that they better get their act together and learn to defend themselves, because we're not going to be Big Brother for the rest of their existence.
Well, no, we need them to be able to, to be able to control their continent. We need them to be able to, defend themselves, because
Right.
we're every year we get closer to an, even with the tension, it's like our enemy we're only as strong as our weakest link. And
That's
if they're
true.
the weakest link, then we need to cut that part of the chain out.
Exactly. So that's the way I look at it. If our allies aren't strong enough, we need to find new allies.
Or we need to just worry about solidifying our own, borders and our own.
I agree.
We can't rely on them, and then there's no reason they should be able to rely on us either.
I agree.
I'm
I agree.
so glad that Marco did one of the greatest speeches internationally that any human being could give for our country, and that was great, and I love it. And I hope they listen.
I do too.
That's it. I hope they listen.
I do too. Let us know down in the comments below. Did you guys think the speech was good, great, and not so good? And if you didn't like it, also let us know what you think about it.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's going to be people who didn't like the speech.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, but it is what it is. People have their own opinions, so.
But I thought it was a great speech.
I did too. On that note, we're going to end it. I just want to thank Double D for doing this with me every week. It's really great to, experience and share this with you. Most importantly, I want to thank God, because without him, none of this is possible. I want to thank the audience, and I want to thank my friends and family.
And Bert, as always, thank you every week and every time we put the show together. Audience, thanks for sticking around and hanging out with us, man. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe while you're at it. And most importantly, though, as always, I would like to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because without Christ, I wouldn't be here anyway. I'd probably be dead. Who knows? But with that, Good night, y'all.
All right, everybody, have a good one. Peace.